I sauntered back. He was down on his knees, and there was blood on his hands and a big streak across his chin where he'd wiped it. He looked up at me, his mouth hanging open. I laughed. I had to laugh or do something worse, and his eyes squeezed shut, and he bawled. He got to his feet, smearing his face with his big flabby hands, staring at me stupidly. "Who did it, Lou?" "Why, it was a plain case of suicide. But, well, that don't make no sense." "It's the only thing that does make sense. Suicide, you hear me? I didn't kill her. Don't you say I killed her. She killed herself." I shot him then, right through his gaping, stupid mouth. I emptied the gun into him. Stooping, I curved Joyce's hand around the gun butt, and then I dropped the gun in her side. I went out the door and across the fields again, and I didn't look back. I found the plank, and I carried it down to my car. If the car had been seen, then the plank was my alibi. I'd had to go up and find one to put under the jack. I ran the jack up on the plank and put the spare tire on. I threw the tools into the car, started the motor, and backed toward Derrick Road. Ordinarily, I'd no more back into a highway at night without my lights than I would without my pants. But this wasn't ordinarily, and I just didn't think of it. If Chester Conway's Cadillac had been traveling faster, I wouldn't be writing this. He swarmed out of his car, cursing, saw who I was, and cursed harder than ever. "God damn it, Lou, you know better than that. You trying to get killed, for Christ's sake? What the hell you doing here anyhow?" "Why, I had to pull in there with a flat tire. I'm sorry if I..." "Well, come on, let's get going. Can't stand here gabbing all night." Going? It's still early." "The hell it is. It's 11:15. That damned Elmer ain't home yet. Promised to come right back, and he ain't done it. Probably up there working himself into another scrape." "Well, maybe we better give him a little more time." I had to wait a while. I couldn't go back in that house now. Why don't you go on home, Mr. Conway, and "I'm going now, and you're going to follow me." The door of the Cadillac slammed. He backed up and pulled around me, yelling again for me to come on, and I yelled back that I would, and he drove off, fast. I got a cigar lit. I started the motor and killed it. I started it, and I killed it again. Finally, it stayed running. It just wouldn't die, so I drove off. I drove up the lane at Joyce's house and parked. I shut off the motor, and I got out. I climbed the steps and crossed the porch. The door was open, and he was in the living room talking on the telephone. His face was like a knife had come down on it, slashing away all the flabbiness. He didn't seem very excited. He didn't seem very sad. He was just businesslike, and somehow that made it worse. "Sure, it's too bad. Don't tell me that again. I know all about how bad it is. He's dead, and that's that, and what I'm interested in is her." "Well, do it then. Get on out here. We ain't going to let her die, you get me? Not this way. I'm going to see that she burns." 3:00 in the morning when I got through talking, answering questions mostly to Sheriff Maples and the county attorney, Howard Hendricks. And I guess you know I wasn't feeling so good. I was kind of sick to my stomach, and I felt, well, pretty damn sore and angry. Things shouldn't have turned out that way. It just was plumb unreasonable. It wasn't right. I'd done everything I could to get rid of a couple of undesirable citizens, and here one of them was still alive, and purple hell was popping about the other one. Leaving the courthouse, I drove to the Greek's place and got a cup of coffee that I didn't want. His boy had taken a part-time job in a filling station, and the old man wasn't sure whether it was a good thing or not. I promised him I'd drop by and look in on the lad. I didn't want to go home and answer a lot more questions from Amy. I hoped that if I had stalled long enough, she'd give up and leave. Johnny Pappas, the Greek's boy, was working at Slim Murphy's place. He was around at the side of the station when I drove up, doing something to the motor of his hot rod. I got out of my car, and he came toward me slowly, sort of watchfully. "I just heard about your new job, Johnny. Congratulations." "Yeah." He was tall, good-looking, not at all like his father. "Dad send you out here?" "Well, he told me you'd gone to work here. Anything wrong with that?" "Well, you're up pretty late." "Well, so are you. Now how about filling her up?" He got busy, and by the time he was through, he'd pretty much lost his suspicions. "I'm sorry if I acted funny, Lou. Dad's been kind of nagging me, and I thought he was having you check up on me. Oh, you know better than that, Johnny. Sure I do. You're the only real friend I've ever had in this lousy town. Why do you do it, Lou? What's the percentage in bothering with a guy that everyone else is down on? Oh, I don't know. And I didn't. I didn't even know how I could stand here talking to him with the terrible load I had on my mind. Maybe it's 'cause I was a kid myself not so many years ago. What hours do you work, Johnny? Midnight to 7, Saturdays and Sundays. Just enough to keep me in pocket money. Dad thinks I'll be too tired to go to school on Mondays, but I won't, Lou. I'll make it fine. Sure you will. There's just one thing, Johnny. Slim Murphy hasn't got a very good reputation. We've never proved that he was mixed up in any of these car-stripping jobs, but I know. I won't get in any trouble, Lou. Well, good enough. I paid him with a $20 bill, and I got my change and headed home, wondering about myself, shaking my head as I drove. I hadn't put on an act. I was concerned and worried about the kid. Me, worried about his troubles. The house was all dark when I got home, but it would be whether Amy was there or not. I figured that my standing her up would probably make her all the more determined to stay, and that's the way it was. She was up in my bedroom in bed. I've never seen one little old girl so mad in my life. I sat down on the edge of the bed and I pulled off my boots, and for about the next 20 minutes I didn't say a word. I didn't get a chance. Finally, she began to slow up a little, and I tried to apologize. I told her what had happened, that is, what was supposed to have happened, and she could hardly hold herself in until I'd finished.
How could you be so stupid, Lou? Getting yourself mixed up with some wretched prostitute and that awful Elmer Conway. Now there'll be a big scandal, you'll probably lose your job, and...
Why? I didn't do anything.
I want to know why you did it.
Well, it was a kind of favor, see? Chester Conway wanted me to see what I could do about getting Elmer out of this scrape, so...
Why did he have to come to you? Why do you always have to be doing favors for other people? You never do any for me.
I didn't say anything for a minute, but I thought, that's what you think, honey. I am doing you a favor by not beating your head off.
Answer me, Lou Ford.
All right. I shouldn't have done it.
You shouldn't have allowed that woman to stay in this county in the first place.
No, I shouldn't have.
Well, all I've got to say is...
All she had to say would take her the rest of her life to finish, and I wasn't in the mood for it. I reached out and grabbed her by the crotch.
Lou, you stop that.
Why?
You stop that.
She shivered.
You stop that or... Oh, Lou.
I lay down beside her with my clothes on. I had to do it because there was just one way of shutting Amy up. So I laid down and she swarmed up against me. And there wasn't a thing wrong with Amy when she was like that. You couldn't have asked for much more from a woman. But there was plenty wrong with me. Joyce Lakeland was wrong with me.
Lou, what's the matter, dear?
Oh, all this trouble. I guess it's thrown me for a loop.
You poor darling. Just forget everything but me.
She kissed me and whispered what she would do, and she did it. And hell, she might as well have done it to a fence post. Baby Joyce had taken care of me, but good. Amy pulled her hand away and began brushing it against her hip. Then she snatched up a handful of sheet and wiped, scrubbed her hip with it.
You son of a bitch! You dirty, filthy bastard!
What?
You're dirty! I can tell. I can smell it on you. Smell her. You can't wash it off. You...
Jesus Christ! I grabbed her by the shoulders. What are you saying, Amy?
You screwed her. You've been doing it all along. You've been putting her dirty insides inside of me. And I'm going to make you pay for it. If it's the last thing I ever do, I'll...
She jerked away from me, sobbing, and jumped out of the bed. As I got up, she backed around a chair, putting it between me and her.
Keep away from me. Don't you dare touch me.
She didn't see the meaning yet of what she'd said. All she could think of was the insult to herself. But I knew that given enough time, and not much at that, she'd put all the parts of the picture together. She wouldn't have any real proof, of course. All she had to go on was guesswork, intuition, and that operation I'd had. Something, thank God, which seemed to have slipped her mind for the moment. Anyway, she'd talk. And the fact that there wasn't any proof for what she'd said wouldn't help me much. You don't need proof, you know what I mean? Not from what I've seen of the law in operation. All you need is a tip that a guy is guilty. From then on, unless he's a big shot, it's just a matter of making him admit it. Amy, honey, look at me.
I don't want to look at
Now,
you.
look at me. This is Lou, honey, the guy you've known all your life. I ask you now, would I do what you said I did?
You did do it.
Her voice was just a shade uncertain.
I know you did.
You don't know anything. And just because I'm tired and upset, you jump to a crazy conclusion. What, would I fool around with some chippy when I had you? What could a dame like that give me that would make me run the risk of losing a girl like you?
Well...
That had hit her right in the pride, where she was tenderest, but it wasn't quite enough to jar her loose from her hunch. She picked up her panties and began putting them on, still standing behind the chair.
There's no use arguing about it, Lou. I suppose I can thank my lucky stars I haven't caught some terrible disease.
I moved around the chair suddenly, and I got her in my arms. Now, damn it! You stop talking that way about the girl I'm going to marry. You can't say that the girl I'm going to marry would sleep with a guy who plays around with whores.
Let me go, Lou.
She stopped, struggling abruptly.
What did you...
You heard me.
But just 2 days ago, you...
Well, so what? No man likes to be yanked into marriage. He wants to do his own proposing, which is just what I'm doing right now. Hell, we've already put it off for too long, in my opinion.
When shall we do it, Lou? Get married, I mean.
Well, the sooner the better, I lied. I didn't have the slightest intention of marrying her, but I needed time to do some planning, and I had to keep her quiet. She snuggled against me, burrowing her head against my chest. Without seeing her face, I knew she was grinning. She had me on the run, and she was getting a hell of a kick out of it. Well, I'm pretty tired. I think I ought to sleep a little while before
I'll make you some coffee, darling. That'll wake you up.
Oh, honey. The phone rang. She let go of me, and I stepped over to the desk and picked up the extension. Lou? It was Sheriff Bob Maples. Yeah, Bob, what's on your mind? He told me, and I said okay and hung up the phone again. Amy looked at me and changed her mind about popping off.
Your job, Lou?
Yeah, Sheriff Bob's driving by to pick me up in a few moments.
You poor dear, and you so tired. I'll get dressed and get right out.
I helped her dress and walked to the back door with her. She gave me a couple of big kisses, and I promised to call her as soon as I got a chance. She left then, a couple of minutes before Sheriff Maples drove up. The county attorney, Howard Hendricks, was sitting in the back seat of the car. I gave him a cold-eyed look and a nod as I got in the front, and he gave me back the look without the nod. I never had much use for him. He was one of those professional patriots, always talking about what a great hero he'd been in the war. Sheriff Bob put the car in gear, clearing his throat uncomfortably. Sure hated to bother you, Lou. Hope I didn't interrupt anything. Well, nothing that can't wait. I'd already kept her waiting 6 hours. You had a date last night? Asked Hendricks. That's right. I didn't turn around in my seat. What time? Well, a little after 10. The time I figured I'd have the Conway business finished. The county attorney grunted. He sounded more than a mite disappointed. Who was the girl? It's none of your... Oh, wait a minute, Lou. Bob eased his foot off the gas and turned onto Derrick Road. Howard, you're getting way out of line. You're kind of a newcomer out this way, but you still ought to know better than to ask a man a question like that. What the hell? It's my job. If Ford had himself a date last night, well, it shows that he planned on being there instead of, someplace else. You see what I mean, Ford? I saw, all right, but I wasn't going to tell him so. I wouldn't be thinking about an alibi because I hadn't done anything to need an alibi for. No, I reckon I don't know what you mean. Come right down to cases, and no offense meant. I figured you'd done all the jawing you had to when I talked to you an hour or so ago. Well, you're dead wrong, brother. I've got quite a few more questions, and I'm still waiting for the answer to the last one I asked. Now, who was the... Drop it, Howard. Bob jerked his head curtly. She's one of the nicest little ladies in the town, and I ain't got the slightest doubt that Lou had a date with her. I don't get it. She's not too nice to sleep... Well, skip it, but she's too nice to have her name mentioned in the strictest confidence? I'm damned if I can understand. The more I'm around you people, the less I understand you. I turned around, smiling, looking friendly and serious. For a while, anyway, it wasn't a good idea to have anyone sore at me. I guess we're a pretty stiff-necked lot out here, Howard. I suppose it comes from the fact that this country was never very thickly settled, and a man had to be doggone careful of the way he acted, or he'd be marked for life. So, if a man and a woman does something, nothing bad, you understand, but the kind of thing that men and women have always been doing, well, you don't let on that you know anything about it. You don't, because sooner or later you're going to need the same kind of favor yourself. Now, you see how it is? Maples pulled off the pavement and parked on the shoulder of the road, and we got out, and Hendricks nodded toward the weed-grown trail which led up to the old ranch house. He jerked his head at it and then turned and looked at me. You see that track through there, Ford? You know what caused that? Well, I reckon so. A flat tire. You concede that a track of that kind would have to be there if you had a flat tire? I pushed back my Stetson, scratched my head, and I looked at Bob, frowning a little. I don't guess I see what you boys are driving at. What's this all about, Bob? Of course, I did see. I saw that I'd made one hell of a bonehead play. I'd guessed it as soon as I saw the track through the weeds, and I had an answer ready, but I couldn't come right out with it too fast. It had to be done easy-like. This is Howard's show. Maybe you better answer him, Lou. Well, okay. I've already said it once. A flat tire makes that kind of track. Do you know when that track was made? I ain't got the slightest idea. All I know is that my car didn't make it. Well, you're a damn... Huh? Hendricks's mouth dropped open foolishly. But I didn't have a flat when I turned off the highway. Now, wait a minute. Now, maybe you better wait a minute. I don't recollect Lou telling us his tire went flat here on Derrick Road. Well, if I did say it, I sure as heck didn't mean to. I knew I had a puncture, sure, but I turned off in the lane before the tire could really go down. Bob nodded and glanced at Hendricks. The county attorney suddenly got busy lighting a cigarette, and I don't know which was redder, his face or the sun pushing up over the hills. I scratched my head again. Well, I reckon it's none of my business, but I sure hope you fellas didn't chew up a good tire making that track. Hendricks's mouth was working. Bob's old eyes sparkled. Suddenly the sheriff whuffed and coughed and let out a wild whoop of laughter. Doggone it, Howard, if this ain't the funniest. And then Hendricks started laughing, too. Uncomfortable at first, then plain, unashamed laughter. I stood looking on, grinning puzzledly like a guy who wanted to join in but didn't know the score. I was glad now that I'd made that bonehead play. When a man's rope slides off you once, he's mighty cautious about making a second throw. Hendricks slapped me on the back. I'm a damn fool, Lou. I should have known better. I let it dawn on me at last. Well, you don't mean that you thought I... Oh, of course we didn't think so. Nothing of the kind. It was just something that had to be looked into. We had to have an answer for it. Now, you didn't talk much to Conway last night, did you? No. Well, he's really raring and tearing. This woman Lakeman is as good as dead. The doctor says that she'll never regain consciousness, so Conway isn't going to be able to lay the blame for this mess on her. Naturally, then, he'll want to stick someone else with it. That's why we have to head him off on anything that looks, well, even mildly peculiar. Oh, but shucks, anyone could see what happened. Elm had been drinking, and he tried to push her around, and sure, but Conway won't admit it if there's a way out. We all rode in the front seat going back to town. I was in the middle, squeezed in between the sheriff and Hendricks, and all of a sudden a crazy notion came over me. Maybe I hadn't fooled him. Maybe they were putting on an act, just like I was. Maybe that was why they'd put me in the middle, so I couldn't jump out of the car. It was a crazy idea, of course, and it was gone in a moment, but I started a little before I could catch myself. Feeling twitchy? Well, just hunger pains. I haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Well, I wouldn't mind a bite myself. Word of what had happened was already all over town, and there was a lot of whispering and gawking as we pulled up in front of the restaurant. Hendricks stopped to use the telephone, and Bob and I sat down in the booth. We ordered ham and eggs all around, and pretty soon Hendricks came back. That Conway. Now he wants to fly that woman to Fort Worth. Says she can't get the right kind of medical attention here. Well, you like to take a little trip into Fort Worth, Lou? Maybe I'll go along myself. Well, I guess I could, I said. The waitress set the food in front of us, and Bob picked up his knife and fork. I felt a boot kick mine under the table. Hendricks knew how things stood, but he was too much of a phony to admit it. He had to go on playing the big hero, the county attorney that didn't take orders from anyone. Now, see here, Bob. I know the law. Yeah, so do I, the sheriff nodded. The one that ain't on the books. Conway wasn't asking you if he could take her to Fort Worth. He was telling you. Did he mention what time? Well, 10 this morning, he thought. He's chartering one of the airline's twin motor jobs. Uh-huh. Well, that ought to be all right. Lou and me'll have time to scrub up a little and pack a bag. Hendricks didn't say anything. Bob and I were at the airport quite a bit ahead of time, so we went ahead and got on the plane and made ourselves comfortable. I closed my eyes, figuring just to rest them a little, and I guess I must have gone right to sleep. One minute I was closing my eyes, and the next it seemed like Bob was shaking me and pointing out the window. There she is, Lou. There's Cowtown. Where's Mr. Conway? I asked. Oh, he's back in the baggage compartment. I just went back to look myself. She's still unconscious? Uh-huh. She ain't ever gonna be any other way if you ask me. A couple of minutes later, we were skimming along the landing field, and a police car and an ambulance were keeping pace with us. The plane stopped. Bob and I got out and watched while the doctor supervised the unloading of the stretcher. A heavy hand came down on my shoulder. Lou? It was Conway. You come with me in the police car. Sheriff, you ride the ambulance. We'll see you at the hospital. Bob gave him a hard, sharp look. Then his face sort of sagged, and he turned and walked away. I'd been pretty worried about how to act around Conway, and now, seeing the way he'd pushed Maples around, I was just plain sore. I jerked away from his hand, and I got into the police car. The ambulance started up and headed off. We followed it. Conway leaned forward and closed the glass partition between our seat and the driver's. You didn't like that, did you? Well, there may be a lot of things you don't like before this is over. I got the reputation of my dead boy at stake, you understand? And my own reputation. Now I'm looking out for that and nothing but that. And I'm not letting someone's tender feelings get in my way. I don't suppose you would. It'd be pretty hard to start in at your time of life. I wished immediately that I hadn't said it. I was giving myself away, you see. But he didn't seem to have heard me. He wasn't hearing anything he didn't want to hear. They're operating on that woman as soon as she gets to the hospital. Now, if she pulls through the operation, she'll be able to talk by tonight, and I want you there at that time, just as soon as she comes out of the anesthetic. Well? Bob Maples is all right, but he's too old to be on his toes. He's liable to foul up the works right when you need him the most. I don't know as I understand you. I got rooms reserved at the hotel. I drop you off there, and you stay there until I call for you. You get rested up so you'll be on your toes when the time comes. The hotel was on 7th Street, a few blocks from the hospital, and Conway had engaged a whole suite of rooms. The manager went up with me and the bellboy, and a couple of minutes after they left, a waiter brought in a tray of whiskey and ice. I poured myself a drink and took it over to the window. I sat down in a big easy chair and propped my boots up on the radiator. I leaned back, grinning. Conway was a big shot, all right. He could have everything but what he wanted. His son and his good name. His son had beaten a whore to death, and she'd killed him. And he'd never be able to live it down, not if he lived to be 100, and I damned well hoped he would. I poured another drink. Here I was now, but it wouldn't be like this much longer. Joyce was bound to die if she wasn't dead already. I'd got rid of her, and I'd got rid of it. The sickness, when I did it. And just as soon as things quieted down, I'd quit my job and sell the house and Dad's practice and pull out. Amy Stanton? Oh, she wasn't going to keep me chained there in Central City. I didn't know just how I'd break away from her, but I knew darn well that I would. Some way. Somehow. I tried taking a nap. That was no good. I got out a shine cloth from the bathroom and I began rubbing it in my boots. I'd got one brushed up real good and was staring at the toe of the second one when Bob Maples came in. He said hello casually and fixed himself a drink, and he sat down looking into the glass and twirling the ice round and around. I sure am sorry about what happened there at the airport, Bob, I said. I reckon you know I wanted to stick with you. Yeah. I let Conway know I didn't like it. Forget it. Just drop it. Whatever you say, Bob. I watched him out of the corner of my eye as I went ahead rubbing the boot. He acted mad and worried, almost disgusted, you might say. But I was pretty sure that it wasn't over anything I'd done. In fact, I couldn't see that Conway had done enough to upset him like this. He raised his head and looked up at me, and his eyes were clear, but somehow there seemed to be tears behind them. I know what you are, don't I, Lou? Know you backwards and forwards, and I never knowed a bad thing about you. Know just what you're going to say and do, like there at the airport, seeing Conway order me around. I knew you'd feel a lot more hurt about it than I did. That's the way you are. You wouldn't know how to be any other way. You got something on your mind, Bob? I reckon it'll have to keep for a while. I just wanted you to know that I... Yes, Bob? It'll keep. It looked to me like he was getting old and unsure of himself, and Conway had probably given him a hell of a riding that I didn't know about. You had some trouble at the hospital, Bob? Yeah, I had some trouble. He got up and moved over to the window and stood rocking on his heels and turned back to me. She's dead, Lou. She never came out of the ether. Well, we all knew she didn't stand a chance, everyone but Conway, and he was just too stubborn to see reason. He didn't say anything. He went into the bathroom and closed the door. When a man's feeling low, sometimes the best thing to do is to leave him alone. I sat down on the edge of the tub and I lighted a cigar. I sat thinking about myself and Bob Maples. He'd always been pretty decent to me, and I liked him. But no more, I suppose, than I liked a lot of other people. I mean, when it came right down to cases, he was just one of hundreds of people that I knew and was friendly with. Yet here I was, fretting about his problems instead of my own. The door slammed open, and I looked up. Bob grinned at me broadly, his face flushed, whiskey slopping to the floor from his glass. Hey, you running out on me, Lou? I mean, come on in here and keep me company. Why, sure, Bob. I went back into the living room with him, and he flopped down onto a chair, and he drained his drink at a gulp. Let's do something, Lou. Let's go out and paint old Cowtown red. Just you and me, huh? Well, what about Conway? To hell with him. Now, come on. Slide into them boots and let's go. I said, sure, I would. I'd do just that. But that I had a bad callus and I'd have to trim it first, so maybe as long as he'd have to wait, he better lie down and take a little nap. He did it after a little grumbling, and I called the railroad station and reserved a bedroom on the 8 o'clock train to Central City. It would cost us a few dollars personally, since the county would only pay for first-class Pullman fare, but I figured we were going to need privacy. I was right. I woke him up at 6:30 to give him plenty of time to get ready, and he seemed worse off than before. He started hitting the whiskey again, and when we left the hotel, he took a full bottle with him. By the time I got him on the train, I was as frazzled as a cow's hide under a branding iron. I wondered what in the name of God Conway had said to him. Hell, I should have known, because he'd as good as told me. It was as plain as the nose on my face, and I'd just been too close to it to see it. Maybe, though, it was a good thing I didn't know, for there was nothing to be done about it, and I'd have been sweating blood. Once, around midnight, a little while before he went to sleep, Bob's mind must have wandered, for all of a sudden his fist wobbled out and he poked me in the chest. Hey, watch yourself, Bob. You wash yourself. Stop, men with grin. Smile worthwhile. Stop all that stuff, spilt milk and so on. What do you do that for, anyway? Well, I was only kidding, Bob. Well, tell you something I bet you never thought of. Yeah? It's always lightest just before dark. Tired as I was, I laughed. You got it wrong, Bob. You mean... You got it wrong. We got into Central City around 6 in the morning, and Bob took a taxi straight home. He was sick, really sick, not just hungover. He was too old a man to pack away a load like he had. I stopped by the office, but everything was pretty quiet, according to the night deputy, so I went on home. I changed into some fresh clothes, and I made some scrambled eggs and coffee, and as I sat down to eat, the phone rang. When I heard Joe Rothman's voice, it kind of threw me. You know who this is, Lou? Remember our late talk? Sure. About the building situation? Would you mind if I stopped by your house a few minutes? Well, I guess you could. Is it something important? It's a small thing, but important, Lou. A matter of a few words of reassurance. Well, maybe I could... No, I'm sure you could, but I think I'd better see you. He clicked up the receiver. I hung up my phone and went back to my breakfast. He came about 5 minutes later, and he sat down at the table with me. Well, Lou, I imagine you know what I want to hear. Yeah, I think so. Consider it said. The very discreet newspaper stories are correct in their hints. He tried to dish it out and got it thrown back at him. Yeah, that's the way it looks. I can't think of any other explanation. I couldn't help wondering how a woman with her face caved in and her neck broken could score 6 bullseyes on a man. He looked up slowly until his eyes met mine. I shrugged. You said you wanted reassurance? The genuine article, Lou. No substitutes, and I'm still waiting to get it. Yeah, I don't know where you get off at questioning me. The sheriff and the county attorney are satisfied, and that's all I care about. I'll tell you how I see it. I get off questioning you because I'm involved in the matter. Not directly, perhaps, but, well, not indirectly either. Exactly. I knew you had it in for the Conways. In fact, I did everything I could to set you against the old man. Morally, perhaps even legally, I share the responsibility for any untoward action you might take. At any rate, we'll say, I and the unions I head could be placed in a very unfavorable light. Well, you said it. It's your own statement. But don't ride that horse too hard, Lou. I won't buy it if it was murder. You're doing. I can't say offhand what I will do, but I won't let you ride. I couldn't. You'd wind up getting me into something even worse. Oh, hell, what are we... The girl's dead, and Elmer's dead. So regardless of how funny things look, they can't prove anything. If they knew what I knew about your having a motive... For killing her? Why would I want to do that? Say that she was just an instrument for getting back at Conway? You know, that doesn't make sense about this so-called motive. I'd had it for 6 years. I'd known about Mike's accident that long. Why would I wait 6 years and then beat up some poor whore to a pulp just to get a chest of Conway's son? Now tell me if that sounds logical. No, it doesn't sound logical. That's the trouble. The man who walked away from that job, if he walked away... You know he didn't, Joe. So you say. So everyone says. You'd say so yourself if you didn't know how I felt about the Conways. Put that out of your mind once, and what do you have? Well, just 2 people getting into a brawl and killing each other under kind of puzzling circumstances. I'd call that the understatement of the century, Lou. I can't tell you what happened, I said, because I wasn't there. But I know that there are flukes in murder, same as there is in anything else. Man crawls a mile with his brains blowed out. A woman calls the police after she's shot through the heart. A man is hanged and poisoned and chopped up and shot, and he goes right on living. Now, don't ask me why those things are. I don't know. But I do know they happen, and so do you. I guess so, Lou. I guess you're clean, at least. I've been sitting here putting together everything I know about you, and I couldn't make it tally with the picture I've got of that guy. You don't fit the part, to coin a phrase. Well, what do I say to that? Not a thing, Lou. He left. I got the newspapers out of the yard yesterday afternoons, and this morning I poured me some more coffee, and I sat back down at the table. As usual, the papers had given me all the breaks. Instead of making me look like a boob, which they could have done easily enough, they had me down as a kind of J. Edgar Hoover. I laughed. In spite of all I'd been through, I was beginning to feel nice and relaxed. Joyce was dead. Not even Rothman suspected me. When you passed clean with that guy, you didn't have anything to worry about. I debated calling up the newspapers and complimenting them on their accuracy. I could say something about truth being stranger than fiction, or maybe add something like, well, murder will out, or the best laid plans of mice and men. I stopped laughing. I was supposed to be over that stuff. Rothman had warned me about it, and it had got Bob Maple's goat, but... well, why shouldn't I if I wanted to, if it helped to take the tension out of me? It was in character. It fitted in with the dull, good-natured guy who couldn't do anything bad if he tried. If I suddenly stopped talking that way, what would people think? Amy called a little after 8 o'clock, and I asked her to come over that night. The best way to stall, I figured, was not to stall. If I didn't hang back, she'd stop pushing me. I went up to my bedroom and I went to sleep. I woke up at noon and dozed off again and slept till after 2. I showered and shaved, and I got into a clean tan shirt and put on a new black bow tie, and I took a freshly pressed blue suit out of the closet. I ate a bite of lunch and called Sheriff Maple's house. His wife said that Bob was feeling kind of poorly and that the doctor thought that he'd better stay in bed for a day or two. He was asleep right then, and she hated to wake him up. I tried to read a while, but I couldn't concentrate. I wondered what to do with myself now that I did have a day off. I got the car out and headed for the courthouse. 10 minutes later, I was out on Derrick Road making a U-turn back toward town. I don't know why. Well, I do know. She was the only person I could have talked to who'd have understood what I was talking about. But I knew that she'd never be there again. There or anywhere. I drove back toward town, and once I said, "I'm sorry, baby." I said it out loud. You understand, don't you? In a few months more, I couldn't have stopped. I'd have lost all control, and I went home and fixed myself a big meal, and I ate every bite of it. I washed and wiped the dishes, and I mopped the kitchen floor, and I wrung out the mop, and I hung it on the back porch. There wasn't any more work I could do, so I filled up a big coffee cup and I took it up to Dad's office. I set it on his desk and I lighted a cigar and I started browsing along the rows of books. So I reached down a big leather-bound concordance to the Bible and I blew the dust off of it. I carried it over to the desk and I opened it up. There was a picture in it, a little 2x4 snapshot. I turned it around one way and then the other. I turned it sideways and upside down, what I thought was upside down. It was a woman's face, not pretty exactly, but the kind that gets to you without knowing why. But what the hell was it? What was she doing? I couldn't make it out. Offhand, it looked like she was peering through the crotch of a tree. I rubbed the picture against my shirt and I looked at it again. That face was familiar. It was coming back to me from some faraway place like something coming out of hiding. But it was old, the picture I mean, and there were kind of criss-cross blurs of age, I suppose, scarring whatever it was she was looking through. I took a magnifying glass and looked at it. I turned it upside down, as it was supposed to be turned, and then I dropped the glass and shoved it away from me. She was looking through a crotch all right, but it was her own. She was on her knees, peering between them. And those crisscross blurs on her thighs, they weren't the result of age. They were scars. The woman was Helene, who had been Dad's housekeeper so long ago. I put the concordance back on the shelf, and I took the picture into the laboratory, and I burned it. I washed the ashes down the sink. But it was a long time burning, it seemed like. And I couldn't help noticing something. How much she looked like Joyce. How there was even a strong resemblance between her and Amy. The phone rang. I wiped my hands against my pants, and I answered it. Lou Ford speaking. Howard, Lou. Howard Hendricks. Look, I want you to come right down to the courthouse. Well, I don't know about that. I'm kind of... Lou, this is important. Remember what we were talking about this afternoon about the possibility of an outside party being the murderer? Well, you were dead right. Our hunch was right. Huh? Why, but it couldn't. I mean, we got him, Lou. We got the bastard cold. And you mean he's admitted it? Hell, Howard, there's always some crank confessing to... He's not admitting anything. That's why we need you. You can make him talk. I think you know him, incidentally. Well, who, yeah? The Greeks kid, Johnny Pappas. I've already called Conway, and he's flying out from Fort Worth in the morning. I gave you full credit, told him how we'd worked on this idea together, and we'd been sure all along that Elmer wasn't guilty, and, well, he's as pleased as punch, Lou. Boy, if we can just crack this, get a confession... I'll be right down, Howard. I lowered the receiver for a moment, figuring out what must have happened, and then I called Amy. I made her understand that I really wanted to see her, and I did, and I shouldn't be gone too long. Then I hung up, and I took out my wallet, and I spread all the bills out on the desk. I hadn't had any 20s of my own, just the 25 that Elmer had given me. And when I saw that 5 of them were gone, I went limp, clear down to my toenails. Then I remembered that I had used 4 of them in Fort Worth on my railroad ticket, and that I'd only broken 1 here in town where it would matter. Only the one with Johnny Pappas. So I got out the car and I drove down to the courthouse. Howard bustled me in, grabbed me by the elbow, and hustled me into his office. What a break, Lou. He was almost slobbering with excitement. Now, here's what you better do. Sweet talk him. Get his guard down, and then tighten up on him. You tell him if he'll cooperate, we'll get him off with manslaughter. Now, we can't do it, of course, but what you say won't be binding on me. Now, otherwise, you tell him it'll be the chair. He's 18 years old, past 18, and... I stared at him, but he misread my look. Oh, hell. Who am I to be telling you what to do? Don't I know how you handle these guys? Well, you haven't told me anything yet. I know Johnny's kind of wild, but I can't see him as a murderer. What are you supposed to have on him? Supposed hell? Here's the situation, Lou. Now, Elmer took $10,000 out there to that Chippy's house. He was supposed to have taken that much. But when we counted it up, $500 was missing. Yeah? It was like I'd figured. That damned Elmer hadn't wanted to admit that he didn't have any dough of his own. Well, we thought, Bob and I did, that Elmer had probably pissed it off in a crap game or something like that, and the bills were all marked, see, and the old man had already tipped off the local banks. If she tried to hang around town after the payoff, he was going to crack down on her for blackmail. Well, Johnny spent some of the money? $20. He broke it at the drugstore last night, and it went to the bank this morning, and it was traced back to him a couple hours ago when we picked him up. How do you know Elmer didn't blow in the dough and it's just now beginning to circulate? None of it's shown up, just this $120. Now, Lou, let me give you the whole picture. I was willing to concede that he'd come by the money innocently. He pays himself at the filling station, and oddly enough, that pay comes to exactly $20 for 2 nights. He could have taken the 20 in and paid himself with it, but, there's damn few cars that stop him at Murphy's between midnight and 8 o'clock. He'd have to remember anyone that gave him a 20. We could have checked the customers, and he'd have been out of here if he was innocent. Well, maybe it was in his cash drawer at the start of his shift. Are you kidding? A $20 bill to make change with? Now, we'd know he didn't have it, even without Slim Murphy's word. Now, wait. We've checked on Murphy, and his alibi's airtight. The kid? From about 9 Saturday night until 11, his time can't be accounted for. We can't account for it, and he won't. Oh, it's a cinch, Lou. Take the murders themselves. That dame beaten to a pulp. That's something a crazy kid would lose his head and do. And the money, only $500 taken out of 10 grand. He's overwhelmed by so much dough, so he grabs up a fistful and leaves the rest. A kid stunt again. Yeah, I guess you're right, Howard. You think he's got the rest cached somewhere? Either that or he's got scared and thrown it away. He's a setup, Lou. Man, I've never seen one so pretty. Well, he'd said it all. He'd proved it in black and white. Well, you'd better get busy now, Lou. Haven't booked him yet, and we're not going to until he comes through. Now, I'm not letting some shyster tell him about his rights at this stage of the game. No, I don't reckon that would be so smart. Yeah, I guess I better get it over with. I walked downstairs to the jail. The turnkey let me through the gate, and we went past the bullpen and the regular cells to a heavy steel door. There was a peephole in it, and I peered through it, but I couldn't see anything. He opened the door a few inches, and I slid inside, and he slammed it behind me. I stood with my back to it a moment, blinking, and there was a squeak and a kind of scrape, and a shadow rose up. He fell into my arms, and I held him there, patting him on the back, comforting him, you know. Jesus, Lou, Jesus Christ, I knew you'd come, but it was so long, and I began to think maybe you... You know me better than that, Johnny. You know how much I think of you. Sure. He drew a long breath and let it out slowly like a man that's made land after a hard swim. We sat down side by side on the bolted-down bunk, and I held a match for our cigars. I shook the match out, and he puffed, and I puffed, and the glow came and went from our faces. This is going to burn the old man up. I guess he'll have to know, won't he? Yes, I'm afraid he'll have to know, Johnny. How soon can I leave? Well, it won't be long now. Where were you Sunday night? A picture show? What's the difference? You know what I mean, Johnny. Where'd you go after the show, between the time you left it and started work? Well, I don't see what that's got to do with this. I mean, I don't ask you where you were. Well, you can, and I intend to tell you. Haven't I always shot square with you? All right. I'd probably tell you sooner or later anyway. I told the old man that I had this hot date Wednesday, see, but I was afraid of my tires, so I could pick up a couple of good cheap ones and hand him back something each week until I got them paid for. And you needed tires for your hot rod, and you tried to borrow the money from your father? Sure. And you know what he says, Lou? He tells me I don't need tires, that I gad around too much. He says I should bring this babe to the house, and Mom will make some ice cream, and we'll all play cards or something, for Christ's sake. How stupid can a person get?